Indeed logo. Title, Quantifying Empathy Through Service Level Objectives. Ketan Gangatirkar, Vice President of Engineering, Job Seeker, KETAN at Indeed.com.
My name is Ketan Gangatirkar. I'm the Head of Engineering for Indeed's Job Seeker products. This is Quantifying Empathy Through Service Level Objectives, which I presented at SRECon Singapore back in June, but you get it for free and it's only like a 15-minute drive.
On the left, Ketan stands on stage. On the right, a slide deck. Text on slide, I help people get jobs.
As might come as a huge surprise to everybody here, I help people get jobs. We should get t-shirts or something that say that, just to make sure the message sets in.
A smartphone with Indeed job search open. Text, one search. All jobs.
The primary way that I help do that is through our search site. Our original tagline was one search, all jobs. Indeed was built on the idea that there were a lot of job sites out there. And that's a lot of time investment, it's a lot of hassle.
Arrows connect 6 boxes labeled Job Site 1 through infinity to an Indeed logo on a cloud and database symbol. An arrow connects the logo to a smartphone with the Indeed's job search on screen.
So we built a product that visited all of these job sites and collected the job information into a single database. We then made all those jobs available through our search site, which could deliver them to job seekers who are looking for new employment. And this is great when it works. It's super great.
A smartphone displays an internal server error. Text, no searches, no jobs.
Sometimes it doesn't work, and then we are no searches and no jobs. Sometimes things break. Computers are hard. Software is complicated. This is why we need SLOs. Service level objectives help us understand what targets to shoot for so we can make sure that our site is available for the job seekers that need us. So somebody working on SRE might get an email looking something like this.
He reads from a screenshot of an SLO violation.
There was an SLO violation, and Job Search failed the Vietnam availability check for 13 whole minutes, which meant that we only had 99.98% of availability over the last 90 days against a target of 99.99%, which is our SLO. You might ask, as my son often does, Daddy, where do SLOs come from?
A young boy leans on a reflective table. A cartoon speech bubble rises from his mouth. Text, Daddy, where do SLOs come from?
Oh, well, that's easy. SLOs are used by SREs, so the SREs define the SLOs.
The boy wears a white cone around his neck. Text in speech bubble, I don't think Daddy knows the answer.
That wasn't really satisfying to my son. I don't think Daddy knows the answer. Well, what's wrong with this? What did my 6-year-old son sense was wrong about this? Why shouldn't the SREs define the SLOs? They're the ones who have to enforce them. They're the ones who have to meet them. Well, your product, whatever it is, exists to serve users.
In an illustration, a hand supports a person's head and shoulders.
You use service level indicators, which are a quantifiable measure of the quality of the service, to tell how good of a job you're doing.
In 2 illustrations, line graphs.
And then you use those to set targets, which we call service level objectives. Great, okay. So these service level objectives, they determine the user experience. They determine how fast your site is, how available it is, how responsive it is. If SLOs determine the user experience, and SREs determine the SLOs, that means that the SREs determine the user experience. That's a little strange. How many SREs think of that as their job? Probably not very many. SREs determining user experience is pretty unusual and pretty foreign, but they're the ones who are in fact doing it, even if they're not thinking it.
2 circles contain cartoon people. Between the circles, an equals sign with a slash through it.
The problem is your SREs aren't your users. They're distinct sets of people.
Speech bubbles with lines inside rise above the cartoon people.
Your SREs, moreover, don't talk to your users. They don't go on the customer support line, they don't go on office visits, they don't do usability testing.
One person thinks of a wolf. The other thinks of a tiger.
Your SREs don't understand your users. They're just different types of people who think about different things in different ways. Now, SLOs are great tools. SLOs are consistent. You set a target and you hold to that target. They're objective. The site's too slow. No, I think it's fine. Well, if you have an SLO, there's an objective understanding. They're also measurable. You can tell how far or how close you are to your SLO. And then they're explicit. It's not some intuitive, implicit understanding that people have. It's explicit. You can talk about it, you can think about it, you can analyze it and reason it. But one thing they are not is empathetic. These tools don't have a built-in understanding of people. They don't have a built-in understanding of your users.
In a meme, a person gestures toward a SLO violation screenshot. Text, is this an empathy?
So you look at this SLO violation and you ask, is this an empathy? Do you look at this SLO violation email and think, there's a real connection to the user here. There's a real understanding of what the user is experiencing and feeling. Not really. This is not an SLO, or this is not an empathy. So how do you put empathy in your SLOs? Well, you can take this and you add what I call quantified empathy to your SLOs. You start with what I showed you before.
On the left, the SLO violation screenshot. Text, job search availability check in Vietnam for 13 minutes. 99.98% availability, last 90 days, 99.99% SLO. On the right, a new version displays 38 frowning cartoon people. Text, 3,802 job seekers can't get jobs. Job search was unavailable to people in Vietnam for 13 minutes. 99.98% availability, last 90 days, 99.99% SLO.
What if you turned it into this? 3,802 job seekers can't get jobs. And you see all these sad faces representing the poor job seekers that are being disappointed. And you talk about how job search was unavailable, not to an availability check, but to people in Vietnam for 13 minutes. There are real people on the other end of this product, and you want to find some way to channel that empathy into your service level objectives. If you quantify empathy, then you will create better SLOs. And through that, you're going to make smarter decisions about how to work on your product and what to work on. From that, you will build a better product, and that's going to make your users happier. SLOs also make people better. They don't just serve people better, they make people better.
Lisa and Bart Simpson watch Homer sleep on a couch. Homer drools.
The thing is, people sleep. People sleep all the time. I spend, I don't know, like 8 hours every day sleeping? That's kind of nuts.
A neon sign. Text, open, 24/7.
SLOs, they're 24/7. They're running all the time.
A suitcase covered with stickers. Along the edges of the suitcase, Big Ben, the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower, and other tourist landmarks.
People go on vacation. These ridiculous ideas that they have about leaving the office and going seeing the world.
A cartoon person works on a laptop as the moon shines through a window.
SLOs, though, are always working.
A goldfish in a fish bowl.
And then empathy is individual, right? Each person has an individual feeling, an individual connection. My connection is going to be different from your connection. It's going to be different from somebody else's.
7 goldfish swim in front of a toy ship.
But SLOs are collective. They're a shared understanding and a shared contract that we as a team can agree on. It's not reliant on each individual's empathy to drive the success of the product.
A cheeseburger with many layers of meat, cheese, lettuce, and tomato.
And then people need food, and they have moods. Sometimes they're diligent, sometimes they're frustrated, sometimes they're just not really working at it. The thing about SLOs is SLOs don't get hangry.
Leonardo DiCaprio smiles and strolls down a street.
They're always there. They have no moods. They're just even and steady the whole time. A lack of empathy will lead to a subpar experience for your users. Your users could be more demanding than your SLOs are.
An orange rectangle labeled passing slow underneath a dotted line labeled good user experience. The gap between the rectangle and line is labeled empathy gap.
Maybe you've got a good user experience that's up here. That's what the user needs to have a positive experience for your product. But you set an SLO here and you're passing it. You set the SLO too low, but you're passing it so you think things are good. But there's this empathy gap between what you're delivering to your users and what they need.
A red circle labeled features your SLOs track.
Also, your users may notice features your SLO doesn't cover. Your SLO may cover a subset of the features in your product, but there's this larger space of features your users care about.
A larger, darker red circle labeled features users cares about.
This missing section is another form of empathy gap. On the other hand, lack of empathy can also lead to wasted effort. In SRE, we think of ourselves as being the vanguard of the 21st century, right?
In a photo, two members of Daft Punk wear shiny helmets.
And we want to make things always harder and better and faster and stronger with shiny technology that's continually getting better and better. But that might not always be the best idea. Is a higher service level always better? Probably, but there's a cost associated with that.
A line graph with service level on the x-axis and perfection on the y-axis. A line, labeled cost, trends upward.
The cost of an increasingly perfect service level is going to keep on increasing asymptotically to infinity. You will never attain perfection, and you will run out of money trying to get there. Maybe that's too much of a good thing. We want things to be good, but perfection?
An hourglass.
That might not be warranted. Higher service levels cost time. You have to invest time that you could be working on other things into increasing your service level.
5 $100 bills.
Higher service levels cost money. You have to buy servers, you have to buy load balancers, you have to set up new data center points of presence, etc.
A hand holds a seedling.
Higher service levels cost opportunity. Whatever you're doing to drive that higher service level is something you're not doing to improve your product in some other way. You could also have the situation that your users could be less demanding than your service level objective. You might have a good user experience that's about here, but because you're always trying to be harder, better, faster, stronger, you might need to get all the way up here to pass the SLO.
An orange rectangle labeled passing SLO extends beyond a dotted line labeled good user experience. The portion of the rectangle that extends beyond the line is labeled waste.
And that could be good in some ways, but then you've got this big waste here. You're actually overshooting what you need to do to provide a satisfactory user experience.
A green circle labeled features users care about.
Your SLO may also cover things your users don't care about. Maybe they only care about parts of the product. They don't care about everything in the product.
A larger, darker green circle labeled features your SLOs track.
But if you set an SLO for everything, there's this larger wasted space of what's covered.
A boulder crushes a skeleton above the waist.
And that results to a situation kind of like this.
The skeleton is labeled SRE. The boulder is labeled pointless alerts.
You've got this poor SRE here, and they got crushed to death under all of these pointless alerts. It's too much.
In an illustration, Goldilocks sips from a small bowl.
How good is just right for your service level objective? How do you make sure you're serving the user experience without wasting your energy, without wasting your effort, without burning out your SREs on work that doesn't help the user experience? These are user research and product management problems, but they're solved by your technology teams, and you need to connect your technology teams to your users and your product. SRE, by the nature of what they do, they actually make product decisions, even if they're not always realizing it, or even if you're not outside of SRE realizing that. Do you write code for accuracy or for freshness?
In two photos, a red sports car and a blue Jeep.
Do you target speed of the site or availability of the site?
In two photos, a server room and an escalator.
Do you add a new point of presence or do you implement auto-scaling?
Two men struggle to walk up the escalator as it moves downward.
Implement it better than those guys. One good tool for this is the 5 whys, which has been used in a lot of incident analysis. The idea is you take something that happened and you ask why, and you get a cause of that. And then you ask why again to get the cause of that. And you go 5 whys deep to understand the contributors to whatever adverse event you're investigating. Well, you can actually do this for positive events as well. You can ask 5 whys for the things that you want to do that you think will be good. So let's take one of those examples from before. Adding a new network point of presence versus implementing auto-scaling. Well, why do we want to add a new point of presence? And why do we want to implement auto-scaling? Well, we want to add a new point of presence so that we can have fewer network hops between our user and our servers. We want to implement auto-scaling so that our site adds capacity when needed. Okay, sounds good. Let's go one deeper. Let's ask why again. Why do we want fewer network hops? Well, we want a faster page load. We want the users to experience the site more responsively, more quickly. And why do we want to add capacity when needed? Because that gives us more throughput during the peak times. Okay, that's 2 whys. Let's go for a third. Third why, we ask why faster page load? Well, that gives us a lower bounce rate. Users are going to leave a site that's slow, a site that's quick, they're more likely to stick around. Why do we want more throughput? Well, that way we have fresher data available on the site. We deliver jobs more quickly to job seekers. Go to the fourth why with me. Why do we want a lower bounce rate? A lower bounce rate results in increased engagement. Job seekers will do more, they'll interact with the site more, they'll click on more jobs, apply to more jobs. Why do we want fresher data? Because then we provide greater utility, greater value to the job seeker. If the jobs are available on Indeed as quickly as they are available anywhere else, they derive more benefit. And then the fifth why. Why do we want increased engagement? Why do we want greater utility? Well, increased engagement leads to higher revenue. Job seekers click on more sponsored jobs, which drives more revenue. Why do we want greater utility? Because it might lead to higher retention, the longer that job seekers stick with Indeed. Now, we've taken this technical decision of adding a new point of presence and implementing auto-scaling, and now we've turned it into a product or business decision, which makes it a lot easier to think about in the context of our users and our product and our business.
4 cartoon people in circles. Text, marketing, CEO, SWE, SRE.
Now, people will disagree. It's going to be typical, right? Lots of people have different opinions about what the right thing to do is. So marketing may say, we want faster pages. And the CEO will say, less downtime. Meanwhile, the software engineer wants to increase throughput. And then the SRE just says, please reduce the errors on the site. Not only will people disagree, people will disagree a lot. Let's say you settle on faster pages. Maybe marketing says, 400 milliseconds, that's good. I want 400 milliseconds. Then the CEO says 300 milliseconds. Software engineer says, no, I can do better, 250 milliseconds. And then the SRE is like, whoa, slow it down a bit. How about 265 milliseconds? Those 15 milliseconds really make a huge difference to me. You've got to settle this argument somehow. How do you make sure your team does it right? They pick the right things to focus on at the right levels.
A light bulb.
Well, I've got a bright idea. You just have one person who makes all of the decisions. Then you don't have any disagreement. One person's in charge. Everybody does what they say.
An illustration of Michelangelo's painting, The Creation of Adam. God touches Adam's index finger.
In software engineering, we call this the God object anti-pattern. It's where you have lots and lots of code, but you've got that one chunk of code that knows everything about everything. It's a pain in the butt to maintain, it's really easy to break, and it's incomprehensible. It doesn't scale at all. All right, so throw that out. The thing is, it's hard for SRE to make these product decisions for all the reasons I described before. Well, how about you just hire the right people? Just hire the right people. The problem you have is that you're not hiring the right people. This will solve everything. Well, people in the world, they vary. Their personalities vary. There's some subset of people who will naturally understand users. They just somehow have this innate connection, this stronger sense of empathy and intuition. And that's great. Then there's some people who don't naturally understand users, but they could understand users with some training and with some guidance. And then there are the people who, no matter what you do, they're not really ever going to understand users. Just something in that connection with the users is always going to be missing. All of these can be valuable employees. And the thing you have to ask yourself is, can you limit your candidate pool to just these people on the left, just the people with the natural intuition, the natural empathy? In this market, you can't. You've got to look at all of the people who can be valuable for your business, but you've got to figure out how you can support them. Another problem is that individuals don't scale. A lot of the intuition-driven things that we could do, just because we know the right thing, it's not going to scale.
A line graph with time on the x-axis and product complexity on the y-axis. A line trends upward.
Your product complexity is going to increase over time as you add more features, as you extend the product that you have. The number of products you have is also going to increase over time.
2 people compete in a Nathan's hot dog eating contest. 1 grimaces.
And one individual's ability to keep with all of this is just limited. You can only eat so many hot dogs. You're going to hire the best people, but even the best people have their limits.
A green lizard.
You can't scale up just by making things bigger. You're adding people to your organization, and that's like taking this cute little lizard, some kind of lizard motif today, not on purpose.
Godzilla stands next to a building in ruins.
And then you scale it up into Godzilla. The thing is, Godzilla can't actually exist. The cardiovascular system doesn't scale up to that. I have this really long letter to Hollywood about this. I'm going to put on an online petition. All of you sign it. I'll have a link at the end. Godzilla is totally unrealistic. It doesn't scale. You can't just take something small and make it bigger.
A robotic Godzilla.
You have to make some kind of structural change. Call it Mecha Godzilla. That helps you scale up. Replace flesh with metal. Replace muscles with motors. You've got to do something. You can't just scale up by making things bigger. So how do you overcome these obstacles? Hopefully I'm not just here to tell you, here are all these problems, enjoy, right? How do you overcome these obstacles? You quantify the empathy. You have this somewhere in your company, somewhere in your organization, you have this intuition and this empathy for your users, and you quantify it to make it something useful for your SREs. You have to get to know your users. That's the first step. And then you understand what your product does for them. How are you providing value? How are they benefiting? You want to apply the 6 flavors of user happiness. Then you find the user pain in your data. Once you've found that, you set the SLOs below the pain threshold. This is everyone's job. SREs are the focus of service level objectives, but this is user experience, this is engineering management, this is product management, as well as SRE. And empathy applies to all products. The case study that I can focus on most, because I work here, is Indeed.
A smartphone with Indeed job search open. Text, 1 search. All jobs.
I talked about how we are 1 search, all jobs. And so a lot of my experience is informed by this.
Arrows connect 6 boxes labeled Job Site 1 through infinity to an Indeed logo on a cloud and database symbol. An arrow connects the logo to a smartphone with the Indeed job search on screen. Another arrow connects the smartphone to a person.
We take all of these jobs from around the web, and we make them available to job seekers. Job seekers care about fast page loads. They care about getting all of the jobs. They care about getting the jobs quickly enough. And they care about seeing more jobs, because you're not going to pick the first job you see and apply just to that and be guaranteed of getting that. You want to see more jobs. On the other hand, job seekers care less about perfect location accuracy. Just tell me roughly where something is. They care less about having all of the features. They want the core experience, and decorative additional features are nice to have, but not strictly necessary. And then they care less about avoiding irrelevant jobs. They'll tolerate some number of irrelevant jobs if they can find the ones they care about most. Now, these concepts apply to other products as well, so we should try understanding the users for other products. Let's look into capturing the flag.
Quake 3 Arena logo. In a screenshot, a player in a red outfit carries a blue flag.
When I was younger, I wasted far too much time on this game, Quake 3 Arena. In particular, I played Quake 3 Arena Capture the Flag. You had a red team and you had a blue team, and you had to steal the flag of the other team and bring it back to your base. Well, what do flag capturers care about when they're playing this game? They care about lag, or should I say the absence of lag. You want really fast network times, because this is a reflex-driven game. You want your actions to be immediately reflected on the playing field. Flag capturers care less about availability. This is a game, it's not mission critical, so I'd like to play when I want to play, but if it's broken, not a big deal. Let's take another case study, customer service. As part of my job, I travel quite a lot. Sometimes there are mishaps.
On a tarmac, a fire burns under the wing of a plane.
Sometimes there are things that don't quite work. This didn't actually happen to me, but on a trip once, I had a 45-minute delay because a tray table wouldn't stay up. These things happen. Sometimes those things happen before you even get on the plane. Your flight is canceled, there's bad weather. you've got to get on the phone to somebody, right? Because something happened, there's a problem, and you're just like, F my life, right?
Text #FML.
I was going somewhere and now it's all busted. I have to deal with all these problems. I wasn't really into the idea of air travel in the first place.
Two people in circles with a telephone between them.
So you get on the phone, you're stressed out from traveling already, and now you've had this problem come up, and you're all agitated. You call up a customer service rep, you need to arrange a different flight.
A speech bubble rises from the person on the left. In the bubble, a crossed-out airplane, an arrow, an airplane, and a question mark. A thought bubble rises from the person on the right. Text, who is this guy?
And you're all like, blah, 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 I need to change my flight, I need to, and like, whoa, well, like, who's this guy? Like, I just picked up the phone, what is all this that's happening? And they have to say, like, please hold while I find your reservation. And you wait. And you wait. And you wait.
Text, #FML, squared.
F my life again, right? Because you were already stressed out, you were already unhappy, and now you're talking to customer service. Who here is happy to call customer service? Ever. You don't call customer service when you're happy. You call customer service when you're upset or aggravated or frustrated. So having an experience with customer service that adds to the frustration is the last thing you need.
Tenfold logo.
There's a local company called Tenfold that I've advised a couple times that works on a product trying to solve this problem.
A dashed line connects a customer, phone, company, and a Tenfold logo. 3 dashed lines connect Tenfold to 3 databases.
They connect the customer. When the customer calls the call center, they link into Tenfold's product. And then Tenfold will connect to all of the customer databases.
3 dashed lines connect the databases to an interface. A dashed line connects the interface to an agent.
They'll take the information in all the databases, gather it really quickly into a single view, and put that in front of the customer service agent so that when they pick up the phone, they say, hi, Mr. Gangatirkar, I see that your flight to Charlotte was canceled. Do you want me to put you on a different flight? That is so much better. Customer service representatives, who are the customers of this product, they care about fast enough page loads. They want to get the customer data fairly quickly. They care about availability because they've got somebody who's upset on the phone and they want to be ready and able to help them. They don't want to have to deal with any broken computer systems. They also care about data freshness. They want to know that my flight was canceled, even if it happened 1 minute ago, because that's what I'm calling about. If their information shows that my flight's on time and I'm on that flight, but I'm standing there stranded with a canceled flight being stuck in the middle of nowhere, they need to know that. They also care about accuracy. They should know that I was going to Charlotte and not to Chicago. On the other hand, they care less about having the fastest possible page loads. 500 milliseconds versus 600 milliseconds probably doesn't matter so much to them. They also care less about having lots and lots of features. There's a core experience here, a core set of information that really matters. They don't have to have everything happening. In all of these situations, empathy rides an S-curve. You can chart user happiness according to the shape of the S-curve. So let's take this generic example. We plot user happiness against the brokenness of the user experience.
A line graph with brokenness on the x-axis and user happiness on the y-axis. High on the user happiness axis and low on the brokenness axis, a red line segment. Text, basically perfect.
At the high end, there's little to no brokenness, and it's basically perfect, and your users are almost as happy as they can be.
Low on the user happiness axis and high on the brokenness axis, an orange line segment. Text, uselessly broken.
On the other hand, when there's enough brokenness, the software is basically useless. You can't do anything for your users.
A green, downward trending line connects the red and orange segments. Text, usable.
The interesting part is in the middle, where your software is a little bit broken, but it's still usable. This is the S-curve of user happiness when using your product.
A box surrounds the portion of the red line directly above the green line.
You want your SLOs to be in the sweet spot, above the area of slightly broken but usable. You want to be in the just barely perfect area, but you don't want to go too far. You also want to have some padding in your SLOs so you have a little room to slip in case there's a brief blip. User happiness is not a single thing. You can break it down into basically 6 flavors of user happiness. The first one is availability. The second is responsiveness. The third is freshness. The fourth is completeness. The fifth is accuracy and precision. And the sixth is breadth of functionality. Now, I know this can be a lot to remember, so there's a handy mnemonic that you can use, an acronym for this. It's ARFCAPBOF. Or if you're posting to social media, hashtag ARFCAPBOF.
He points to his head.
Remember it. It'll be trending. So availability. Can your product perform its most basic functions? The core thing that your users came to your product for, is that working? For Indeed, it's finding jobs. For Quake 3 Arena, it was capturing the flag. And for Tenfold, it's displaying customer records.
A line graph with availability on the x-axis and flagaliciousness on the y-axis.
Let's take a look at Quake 3 Arena against availability. We want to see how much flagaliciousness I can attain as a user. At the high end, with 99.5% or better availability, I'm getting the flag.
High on the flagaliciousness axis and low on the availability axis, a blue line segment. Along the availability axis, 99.5%.
This is a good time.
A green line segment connects to the blue segment and trends downward. Text, I'll try again later. Along the availability axis, 98%.
If it's worse than that and I hit a bad period, it's like, all right, I'll try again later. I didn't have to capture the flag right now. I can come back later.
An orange line segment connects to the green segment and trends downward. Text, it's just a game.
And then if it's below 98%, if it's unreliably available, well, it's just a game. It's not a big deal.
A Quake 3 logo over the meeting point of the blue and green segments.
So maybe if I'm operating a Quake 3 server, I would target 99.5% availability. I don't have to try super hard because it's just a game. It's not that important. Now let's look at something completely different, an enterprise software service like Tenfold.
A line graph with availability on the x-axis and productivity on the y-axis. High on the productivity axis and low on the availability axis, a blue line segment. Text, I can do my job.
At the high end, above 99.9%, the customer service rep is thinking, okay, I can do my job. I can help these people.
A green line segment connects to the blue segment and trends downward. Text, this is tolerable.
If it drops, and it could drop really steeply, between 99.5% and 99.9%, all right, this is tolerable. I have a couple of blips when I'm trying to help the people on the phone, but it's tolerable.
An orange line segment connects to the green segment and trends downward. Text, we're paying how much?
Drops a little bit more, and you start getting questions. We're paying how much? But this thing doesn't work. I need to help these people, but it's not working.
A red line segment connects to the orange segment and trends downward. Text, cancel the contract.
Drop just a little bit more, and then cancel the contract. We're not paying this much money for software that's only 99% available. So the drop-off is very different, and it happens at very different levels in the enterprise software space compared to just a game.
A Tenfold logo over the meeting point of the blue and green lines.
Tenfold might want to set their service level a lot higher, at 99.95% availability, because they're a paid product in the critical path for a lot of frustrated people who need help. Number 2, responsiveness. In your product, there's going to be a user action, and that user action is going to be connected to some kind of product reaction. And then that product reaction is going to be communicated back to the user.
Arrows connect user action and product reaction in a loop.
The time between the start of the cycle and the end of the cycle is the responsiveness of your product. Let's take Indeed, and we look at job clicks against page load time.
Indeed logo. A line graph with page load time on the x-axis and job clicks on the y-axis. Along the x-axis, page load times from 125 milliseconds to 16,000 milliseconds double with each increment. A black S-curve trends downward.
This drops off a little bit more steadily. This isn't the same elbow. By the way, I totally made up these numbers.
An orange line segment at the high end of the line.
At the high end, we have, for a doubling of latency, we have very little click loss. If we go from 125 milliseconds to 250 milliseconds, that's basically imperceptible to the job seeker. So there's very little loss of clicks.
An orange line segment at the low end of the line.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, we actually have the same phenomenon. We double our latency from 8,000 milliseconds to 16,000 milliseconds, and we lose very few clicks. Of course, the reason for that is we lost all of our users before we got to 8,000 milliseconds. The site was already so broken that there were very few people left. In fact, those clicks are probably just bots.
A blue line segment between 250 and 500 milliseconds.
The interesting part is right around here, say between 250 milliseconds and 500 milliseconds. Here, doubling of the latency leads to a major loss of clicks. This is the S-curve again. At the top, it's shallow, then it gets steep, and then it smooths out again at the bottom.
An Indeed logo over the meeting point of the orange and blue segments at the high end of the line.
We might want to target our SLO here to say that 99% of pages need to load within 250 milliseconds, because we want to avoid the region where we have that steep click loss as latency.
Quake 3 Arena logo. A line graph with network latency on the x-axis and flags captured on the y-axis. High on the flags captured axis and low on the network latency axis, a blue line segment. Text, I am awesome.
Increases. Let's take a look at flags captured in Quake 3 Arena. At the high end, or at the low end of latency, when I've got 50 millisecond ping time, I'm thinking, I'm awesome. I can get the flag whenever I want. Anybody tries to come after me, I'll frag them. Awesome. I am the god of this arena.
A green line segment connects to the blue segment and trends downward. Text, I can play.
If it drops a little bit, 50 milliseconds to 80 milliseconds, okay, I can play. I've been returned to mortal status, but this is still enjoyable. I can still play it.
An orange line segment connects to the green segment and trends downward. Text, I'm switching to solitaire.
Below 80 milliseconds, I'm switching to solitaire. This is frustrating. By the time I shoot, the person is gone. They're not there anymore. I'm missing all the time.
An Indeed logo over the meeting point of the orange and green segments.
So if I'm running a Quake 3 server, I might target an SLO, saying 99% of the time I want to be less than 80 milliseconds. 50 milliseconds would be great, but maybe my target for something that's just a frivolous game is going to be what's playable as opposed to what's optimal. Let's look at freshness. Freshness I'm defining here as how close to real time the data are. What you want to do here is you want to ask, how are user goals compromised by stale data? How much does it harm your user to be exposed to data that might be minutes, hours, or days out of date?
Quake 3 Arena logo. A line graph with job availability lag on the x-axis and user happiness on the y-axis. High on the user happiness axis and low on the job availability lag axis, a blue line segment. Text, this is awesome.
Let's take a look at Indeed. If we have jobs available within 6 hours, that's awesome. Most job seekers don't check the site more than once a day, and so if something takes a few hours to get to Indeed, they're probably not going to notice because they're only coming once a day.
A green line segment connects to the blue segment and trends downward. Text, this website is free.
If it's 6 to 24 hours, that may start to affect the comprehensiveness of the results they see. And they'll think, all right, this isn't great, but this website is free.
An orange line segment connects to the green segment and trends downward. Text, I should use Glassdoor instead.
Once we get beyond 24 hours, then they might start to say heretical things like, I should use Glassdoor instead. And we don't want that at all.
He brings his hand to his chest.
I'm kidding. Glassdoor is a beloved corporate sibling. We like them very much, but we still want to do better than them.
An Indeed logo over the green line segment.
So at Indeed, we might set our service level objective to be 99% of jobs show up at Indeed in less than 18 hours. That's not great for job seekers, but it keeps that daily job seeker happy because they're seeing relatively fresh updates.
Tenfold logo. A telephone between two people in circles.
On the other hand, for something like Tenfold, dealing with all these frustrated people who are calling them on the phone, the interaction there is, I'm calling up the customer service rep to rearrange my flight schedule.
An arrow connects the customer to a computer. An arrow connects the computer to the Tenfold logo.
While I'm doing that, it's got to initiate, while I'm doing that, I'm also trying to do something on their site. I'm trying to make changes, see what's available. That's got to be fresh. It goes into Tenfold.
An arrow connects the Tenfold logo to a customer service rep's computer. An arrow connects the computer to the rep.
And then from Tenfold, it goes to the customer service rep's computer while I'm on the phone with them. They might be walking me through a change. They might be walking me through changing my account, changing my flight, something that they can't do that I should do for them. In this case, it's a much more real-time thing. So the customer service rep's perspective, and indirectly my perspective of the product, is going to be dependent on the account data lag on a different scale.
Tenfold logo. A line graph with account data lag on the x-axis and product value on the y-axis. High on the product value axis and low on the account data lag axis, a blue line segment. Text, this is awesome.
If it's within 10 seconds, I'm talking to them on the phone, I'm saying, okay, I'm pulling up my reservation and I'm changing my seat reservation. Do you see that? Up to about 10 seconds, that's tolerable.
A green line segment connects to the blue segment and trends downward. Text, this works okay.
Beyond 10 seconds, it gets a little awkward. We're both on the phone, not talking to each other, just waiting. It's manageable, but it's kind of awkward. At least we're not looking at the person face to face, just staring them in the eye, waiting for the screen to load. Not good, though.
An orange line segment connects to the green segment and trends downward. Text, better than nothing.
Beyond 20 seconds, all right, it's better than nothing. This is a really drawn-out process. I'm impatient. I want to get on that next flight, get to my destination. But I can tolerate this. This is better than nothing.
A red line segment connects to the orange segment and trends downward. Text, I'd rather have nothing.
And then beyond 30 seconds, actually, I was wrong. I would rather have nothing. I would rather talk to the customer service rep and step them through what I'm doing, or have just not deal with them at all. Because 30-second lag between when I do something and when the rep sees it on every single interaction is intolerable. So at Tenfold, they might want to set some kind of SLO that says 99% of user actions are visible in under 15 seconds. That might be good for them. It's not the optimal one, but it's right in the sweet spot, right in the zone of what's usable. The fourth flavor is completeness. Do you have all of the data? Not just one data, not just two data, all of the data.
5 photos of data, an android from Star Trek, The Next Generation. Indeed logo. A line graph with missing jobs on the x-axis and user perception on the y-axis. Along the missing jobs axis, percentages from 0% to 100% in increments of 25. High on the user perception axis and low on the missing jobs axis, a blue line segment.
Let's take a look at Indeed again. We advertise that we are one search all jobs, and we try to get all the jobs on the web. It's really hard to do so. We could probably claim with some legitimacy that we're all jobs if we've got 90% of the jobs, if we're missing no more than 10% of the jobs on the web. I think we can still credibly say one search all jobs and be perceived accurately by users.
A green line segment connects to the blue segment and trends downward.
Between 10 and 50% missing jobs, maybe that's one search most jobs. Still pretty good. I don't think we can credibly call ourselves all jobs and deliver the user value we want.
An orange line segment connects to the green segment and trends downward.
If 50 to 75% of the jobs are missing, now it's one search some jobs. Not really compelling. It's not the kind of thing that you advertise and you tell your mom, hey, I work for Indeed. One search, some jobs.
He points, then smiles and shrugs.
She's not going to be impressed by that.
A red line segment connects to the orange segment and trends downward.
And then, of course, if you're missing more than 75% of jobs, it's one search, no jobs. We can't even do the logo right. It's in Comic Sans. Who does that? This just stinks of unprofessionalism.
An Indeed logo over the meeting point of the blue and green segments.
So we might set our target as being less than 10% missing jobs. We want to be true to what we say. If we say one search all jobs, we've got to be really close to having all of those jobs. Then there's accuracy and precision. We gather all the jobs from all these sites. and we stick them in a raw jobs database. I was actually a little bit oversimplifying earlier.
Arrows point from 6 boxes to a box labeled raw jobs. An arrow connects raw jobs to exact job location service.
We take all the job data that we get from the third-party sites, we put them in one database, and then we run those jobs through an exact job location service, where we take the information that we have about the company and the job, and we try to zero into exactly where they are. Not just the city, but perhaps the street address.
An arrow connects exact job location service to processed jobs.
We then feed that into a process jobs database, which delivers them to our search site and to the job seeker.
An arrow connects processed jobs to Indeed's mobile search on a phone. An arrow connects the phone to a person.
The thing is, sometimes this exact job location service is broken. Sometimes it doesn't work. So we have a pass-through from the raw jobs database to the process jobs database that skips that. So we don't do the exact refinement of the location.
A map of Austin, Texas.
Austin can be a big place. Some of you came really far out here to 2222. Thank you, I appreciate it.
An orange circle around Austin's northwestern region. Text, approximate location.
It's a big place. If we say a job is somewhere northwest Austin, vaguely, that's a really big area to cover. It might be a good job for you, or it might be too far.
A blue circle north of the river and south of 183. Text, more precise location.
If we can narrow it down to a much more precise location, north of the river, south of 183, that's going to be a lot more helpful to you in figuring out whether this is a relevant job for you, whether you have to deal with a ton of traffic getting to and from work. These are trade-offs in the user experience. The approximate location is going to be faster. Those jobs are going to get to the site faster, and they're going to be fresher on the site. On the other hand, the more precise location is probably going to be some of the time slower, because we have to go through this extra lookup, which is sometimes not available, and we delay jobs to the site to do that. So the question we have to ask is, do job seekers want faster or more precise? We might settle on an SLO that says we're going to go for the most exact location possible as long as we can get less than 30 minutes of lag.
A scale.
Then there's breadth of functionality. There are the must-haves in your product, and there are the nice-to-haves in your product. How often are the nice-to-have features available? That's your measure of breadth of functionality.
Indeed's mobile search. Blue boxes appear around the stars and reviews in the job listing.
Take Indeed's mobile search. We have these convenient stars and reviews here. We tell you what jobs are available, but we also try to tell you something about the job and something about the employer. Do they treat their employees well? Do they have a good environment? And we report on that both quantitatively and qualitatively. But this isn't critical to the job seeker experience.
Indeed's mobile search without the stars and reviews.
If we take that away, we get something that's a little bit less helpful, but still highly usable. If you're looking for site reliability engineer jobs, you can still satisfy that. So these optional features, we want them, we think they help job seekers, but we don't need them, and we don't want the site to break because of them. We might set a service level objective, something along the lines of 95+% results pages have stars, because we think these are good for job seekers, we think job seekers value them, but we're going to have a hard timeout of 100 milliseconds. If we can't get the stars and the reviews from the service that handles those, we're just going to cut off and stop. And we're going to show you the search results, which are the primary reason you came. So you take all of this understanding and you want to put it into empathy for the user. You want to turn implicit intuition and an understanding of user experience into explicit systems.
A line graph with brokenness on the x-axis and user happiness on the y-axis. 4 S-curves trend downward.
I showed you many ways to draw an S-curve, and these are going to vary across all the products. A lot of cases are going to follow the S-curve, so you can count on that, but there's so many different ways to draw this S-curve.
The S-curves on the graph are replaced by a cloud of red dots.
You have to look in your data to find your S-curve. Figure out your definition of user happiness and your definition of brokenness, and chart them.
A blue S-curve trends downward.
And then draw the curve through them to figure out where the thresholds are for your product. You want to understand when doing this that perception is reality. Your perceptions as somebody building and operating this product are only part of the picture. You may have awesome server times.
100 emoji.
You may have awesome server rates, error rates, but the user experience could still be a nightmare.
Crying emoji.
A lot of web applications are built with an architecture something like this.
A diagram of web application architecture. Along the top of the diagram, view, controller, load balancer, front-end service, microservices, data store. Each level of the architecture connects with an arrow.
You've got a user on one end, and they click, that goes to an AJAX request, which goes to a REST request, service request, queries some kind of data store, then comes all the way back out the stack through results, service response, REST response, AJAX response, and then gets rendered onto the job seeker or user screen.
A bracket labeled easy to measure encloses the REST request and response, service request and response, query, and results.
This stuff is easy to measure. It's all the components, the hardware and the software that are within your control.
A bracket labeled hard to measure encloses the click, AJAX request and response, and render.
And then this stuff here, it's harder to measure. It's measuring the technical aspects of what the user is experiencing on the client, but it's also measuring how the user feels, how they're reacting.
A gray box labeled Technobabble covers all parts of the diagram except the user, click, and render.
The thing is, though, all this stuff over here, it's just technobabble, right? It's just a whole lot of acronyms and gobbledygook. What really matters here is the user experience on the left side, and unfortunately, that's squarely in the category of hard to measure. It's really easy to focus on the stuff that's easy to measure, the technical babble that drives the user experience, but that's not what you're here for. You're here to drive the positive user experience. One way you can get an insight into that is to simulate clients. So you write software that acts like your user, interacts with your product in the way a real user would, and measures the experience from that point of view. You can also measure from real clients. You can write code that instruments the client experience. This is in web contexts often called real user metrics. So you measure what real clients are experiencing, and you collect data from them, not just from the hardware and software directly under your control. When you're in SRE, you also have to be dealing with factors beyond your control. User experience is composed of things that are out of your control and things that are in your control.
An orange box represents out of your control. A blue box represents in your control.
And it's unfair, but this is all of the user experience. They don't just look at the blue part, they look at the entire part, the things that are out of your control and the things that are in your control. So your SLO should cover the whole user experience, not just what's within your control. There's another way to look at this, which is what you can't control, and then what's left over is not just what you can control, but what you have to work with. So from a network latency point of view, let's say your SLO says, I want to have a page load time of under 1 second, and your user's network is adding 400 milliseconds. Well, that's tough. It's a problem to work with, because you still have 600 milliseconds. That becomes your budget. You can't say my budget is 1 second, because then your user experience becomes 1400 milliseconds. While you can't fix the user's network, you can at least understand that it's a constraint that you have to operate under. Then you can, at times, control for what you can't control.
An arrow connects a person to a server. A red X crosses out the person and server. Text, too much latency.
So let's say there's too much latency between your user and your servers. You can't move your users closer to your servers. I've tried that. People called the cops on me. I don't recommend it.
An arrow points from a server to a person. Text, acceptable latency.
But you can move your servers closer to your users. If you have a lot of users in California, set up a data center point of presence there. A lot of users in Boston, set up a data center point of presence there. Just because your company is in Austin doesn't mean your servers have to be in Austin. Your servers can move to where your users are to give them the better latency and better experience they need. There are also ways to cheat. So the typical experience is job seeker comes and loads a page full of jobs.
A blue rectangle contains the word jobs 48 times. A person with ABC in a thought bubble.
They scan it, they read about it, they think about what to do. It's like, okay, got what I needed here. I'm going to do something.
A hand on a keyboard.
And then time passes.
An hourglass. A green rectangle contains the word jobs 48 times.
And then the next page loads. Okay, more jobs. I want to look at those. That's not great. You can make this faster and faster, but there's only so much you can do. If the job seeker's network adds 400 milliseconds, then you're never going to make this faster than 400 milliseconds, unless you cheat. So you can do it this way. The job seeker loads this page.
Underneath the person, 2 arrows represent a request to the servers. A hand serves the green jobs rectangle on a platter.
And while they're reading all of these jobs, you initiate another request to your servers so that when they interact with the page, boom, the next page of results is instantly available. You didn't actually make their network faster. You didn't make your product faster. But if it feels fast, it is fast. So I highly endorse cheating. But you can only recognize that cheating is good if you have an SLO that covers your user experience. Another good thing about empathy is that it avoids overkill. You've got external systems and your components that combine to make the user experience.
Illustrations of a person, phone, cell tower, load balancer, shopping cart, backend service, and database.
You've got the user, you've got their phone or their tablet, you've got whatever cell tower they're connecting to. And then on your end of things, you have your load balancer, you've got your shopping cart application, you've got some kind of backend service, and you've got your database.
A bracket encloses the load balancer, shopping cart, backend service, and database.
You can get to 16 nines of availability on your backend systems, which in a year is 315 nanoseconds of downtime. I would be super impressed if you did that. I'd kind of question your judgment, but I'd be really impressed, I promise you. 16 nines is something to be admired from afar.
A bracket encloses the user, phone, and cell tower.
On the other hand, if your user's side of things only has 99% of availability, maybe because they've got some janky old tablet that they accidentally dropped in the pool, or their local cell connection is poor because they're always, somehow their house is always in a T-Mobile dead spot, not that I'm bitter, then those extra 14 nines of availability are going to be lost on them. All that work you put into this really impressive achievement does nothing for your user.
A line graph with brokenness on the x-axis and user success on the y-axis. A downward trending S-curve made of purple, blue, green, and orange line segments.
You want to look at some kind of threshold that's acceptable for the user system brokenness. And then everything beyond that is overkill.
On the graph, the overkill section is shaded tan.
Once you get past the point of meaningful marginal gains from reducing brokenness, it's a waste of your effort. You can quantify empathy to help solve this problem. So empathy means I feel what you feel. And it means acknowledging that your user's perception is their reality. And since your users are the people you're trying to serve, that also means that your user's perception must be your reality as well.
Arrows connect a user to an SLO and an SLO to an SRE.
You've got user needs, and you can channel those into service level objectives. And then you can take those service level objectives and give them to your SREs as actionable guidance that helps them do their jobs better. No matter how good their natural empathy is, no matter how good their intuition for the user is. You model the user's feelings through these tools, and that way you can simulate empathy, even if you don't naturally feel it, either because you're dead inside or because you don't have that connection.
A 2x2 grid with failing SLO and meeting SLO along the top, and sad user and happy user along the left side.
An ideal situation is when you have a sad user, you have a failing SLO.
A thumbs up appears in the top left box in the grid to represent the failing SLO and sad user.
On the other hand, if your user is sad and you're meeting your SLO, that's an empathy gap.
The words empathy gap appear in the top right box to represent meeting SLO and a sad user.
There's something that your SLOs are missing about what your user needs.
The word overkill appears in the bottom left box to represent failing SLO and a happy user.
If you're failing your SLO, but your user is happy, that's a sign that you're going for overkill. You're trying harder than you actually need to.
A thumbs up appears in the bottom right box to represent meeting SLO and a happy user.
And then if you're meeting the SLO and your user is happy, that's a good state. And this means your SLOs represent an accurate simulation of what your users are feeling and what they need. SLOs with empathy tell me what you as my user feel, even if I don't have a direct connection. SLOs with empathy will tell me what you will feel before you feel it. And this can be a really powerful tool. It means I can fix problems before the users feel pain. It means I can fix problems before the user even notices there's a problem. And it means I can fix problems and I can think about the user before I ever even deploy my service. I can design and architect for what the user needs so I prevent pain from even happening. So going back, how to quantify empathy. Number one, get to know your users. Number two, understand what your product does for them, what they experience and how they benefit from using your product. 3, apply the 6 flavors of user happiness, RCAB-FOF. 4, find the user pain in your data. Find the S-curve that models your product, not my product, not Quake's product, not Tenfold's product. Look in your data to find your S-curve. And then set your SLOs below the pain threshold so that you are jumping into action before your users feel pain so that you can give the user experience they deserve. How you benefit from this? Well, you can raise targets that allow poor user experience. So you build a better product that serves your users better and thus benefits your organization. You can lower targets that don't benefit the user so that you don't spend time on things that are of no value, so you're not crushed under the weight of all of these useless errors that are waking you up at night. You can find gaps in your feature set that are not covered by the SLOs so that you can make sure that everything your user truly wants to do is in an SLO, so you're not disappointing that user. And then you can discard SLOs for features your users don't need. Maybe you want them, maybe you think they're good, but if they're not critical to the user experience, don't get alerted on them. And then you can get everybody lined up behind the same goals. You can talk about what you're aiming for and why you're aiming for it. It's no longer a shouting match of opinions between the CEO and the chief marketing officer and the head of engineering and the head of product. If you quantify empathy, you will create better SLOs. As a result of that, you'll make smarter decisions that build a better product and that make your users happier. Thank you.
Indeed logo.